Intentional expression is powerful and desirable. Intentional expression is powerful and desirable. Yeah.
The first word that jumped out to me when you sent that over was intentional.
Yeah.
I personally feel like the past, getting closer and closer to 2 years of the change of the times, that intentional has been kind of one of the watchwords, that intentional relationships and who we are engaged with, that has become far more important in people's lives. And just in the vein of life is fleeting, how we can live more intentionally and gain the benefits from that. I'm just wondering, intentional expression, that's even more, that's a very specific direction. What does that mean for you?
So intentional expression, I think for me is this overall arcing way I want to live my life, like the path I really want to walk, a path that's really considered and thought about, and then I'm sharing those things with other people. I think I talk about intentional spaces. I talk about intention a lot, like the why behind something. The fact that you've given something real consideration as to why it's present in your life, and also to keep it present so I can continuously keep updating myself, right? I can continuously keep challenging myself to be in this life that, as you say, is fleeting, right? You never know what's going to happen next. So if you're going to do something, do it with intention, do it with purpose, do it with feeling, do it with love, do it with passion. I think that's what it is for me. My work, my personal life, where I decide to put my learning energy, where I decide to put my facilitating and teaching energy, how I hold space, like all of these things are really important. And I think I somehow also needed a way to, in a utopic kind of a way, look at my own identity and also look at how that is expressed outside of my personal life. Like how it's expressed in work, how it's expressed in friends, how it's expressed when I walk down the street. Because I know in this time, a lot has happened, a lot has changed for me. Because I had time, right? And I think that's something that many of us didn't feel like we had, but we did, we just didn't recognize it because we were not intentional about it. We were not intentional about how we spend our time, who we spend our time with, why we decide that we want to spend our time with those people or doing that particular project or have that idea or whatever it is. And although I had to work really hard during this time in a very, very different way, that brought something new for me personally, as well as the projects that I'm working on, as well as Karada House, as well as OhYesPlease. OhYesPlease was born from having time and having to do something else, and then looking at what's the intention behind doing it. Right. So it's all of this that's kind of happened in this very different space and time that we've had the opportunity to be in. And also because I'm different. Like I'm a very different person to who I was a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Like really coming into where my needs and my boundaries are again. Really honing in on what is sex, what is sexuality, and what is sex work to me. And like how to express that as a queer person, how to express that as somebody who has always been doing things very differently. Why is it that it's so hard for us to express, speak to, name what we like and enjoy when it comes to sex, when it comes to attraction, when it comes to desire? Because often we don't know because we've not done that internal study of ourselves to find out what it is that we actually like. And if we don't know, we're too scared to say that we don't know. So we're spending all this time guessing.
Yep.
And then when it doesn't go right, then we want to blame. And I'm like, no, I'm done with that. I'm done with the blaming and the shaming and the making people feel guilty. No, let's talk about it. Let's be open, right? Let's have the conversation so we can actually have as much and as maximum fun as we want together.
Most of the sex workers that I've met, they tend to be empathetic individuals. They are mediators. They are caretakers. There is something about them that allows them to be generous with their bodies and their time and their intimacy. This is not something that is just trivial and can be thrown away. There's a lot of emotional labor that goes into being somebody's fantasy for an hour. And it's so easy on the outside to dismiss it as, here's an attractive person who makes money hand over fist for something that anyone could do. And I just want to challenge that perception, because when it is your job and you're doing it, like I was sometimes 25, 30 hours a week, you are equal parts a personal assistant that needs to look at their penis and
Of course.
and also a therapist who needs to accept the really truest and rawest versions of themselves. And I had clients who were their best selves with me, and I had clients who decide that they can be their worst self with you. And I think that the nature of money changing hands affects everybody differently.
Sex work specifically has so many taboos around those two words put together.
Yeah.
Diane, I think you had some questions around, like, I think there's questions around safety and does legalization make sense?
Yeah.
You want to bring some of those up, Diana?
Well, I think I'd like to start by asking one specific question, since you're talking about your personal story.
Yeah.
Because as we were going into, looking for the information, I just had this question strike in my mind, which was, what if somebody wants to become a sex worker? Then, because you want to become a doctor, yeah, you just go, you find the resources, you know how your life's going to be, right? But what if you want to become a sex worker? That should also be a choice in the whole conversation of, we should legalize it. It is actual work. So yeah, the question, I guess, would be, what would you tell somebody that is thinking of this as an option and they want to choose it? What should they do? What should they keep?
What should they do? Yeah. See, this is something that is an awesome question, right? I got into sex work because I felt confident that I could take care of myself. Other people get into sex work because they feel like they have no other option. And other people get into it because they recognize that they have really something to offer and they want to be at service to others. I think all of those things are valid. And I think my key thing is know your boundaries. If you want to get into sex work, know what your body boundaries are, what your emotional boundaries are, and what your mental and psychological boundaries are before you get into it. I think it is something where it is a job. It's genuine work. It is you're part physical interaction, you're part therapist, part psychologist, right? But there's no training for it. And I find this to be, frankly, mind-blowing.
If you don't go into a room or a date or an escort situation or a sugar daddy interview, any of these things, if you don't pick up the phone or turn on a live stream without your boundaries intact, and without having a confident sense of what your hard limits are and the understanding of a transactional atmosphere, then you will very likely find yourself either violating those boundaries or compromising those boundaries, or you will put yourself in a position where you're more emotionally vulnerable than perhaps you need to be. And if you have that sensibility and you have that confidence, then go stack that cheddar, because you'll do well in this business. But if, as I have found, you're somebody who craves human connection, and that maybe leads you into a line of work where you can use that, it is an asset, but it is an asset that can be turned against you, or you can burn out a lot. I've seen a lot of young women get burnt out from being emotionally open and being intimate with people. And if you don't take the time to self-care and recharge, whether that is knowing you have to take 3 days off. You only can work XYZ amount of times. You need vacations. If you can't go into something treating it like a job that needs to be recovered from, then the shelf life you'll run into you're going to have a bad time. So that would be that is the very long version of the advice that I would give anyone getting into the business.
I wanted to do sex work. But again, coming back to my cardinal theory, I wanted to do that from an intention space of holding space for people and not just be a receptacle to be dumped onto.
The most valuable experiences that I had at the dungeon were moments where I had clients who were truly they were either going through something, a catharsis they didn't know that they had to process, or they were healing something in session.
Thank you for everybody who's watching and listening. I hope this offered some inspiration for you to continue to critically inquire about yourself, who you are and what you want. Boundaries are very important.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with me and for, with us today. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for sharing your experiences. And thank you for being just this lovely, funny person that puts everything into simple words.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly been a pleasure.